My name is Matthew Peasy, and I'm going to be your instructor for this course, AEM Authoring, Building on the Fundamentals. This course picks up exactly where the AEM Authoring Fundamentals course left off. In this course, we're going to talk about how you can create and manage templates. We'll look at some advanced authoring features, things like launches, projects, and workflows. And we'll also talk about how you can target and personalize the experiences you create in AEM. This course was created in partnership with Adobe Digital Learning Services and is designed to expand your knowledge in Adobe Experience Manager. In this first module, we're going to take a look at how we can go about creating and managing templates in AEM. With that being said, I am making some assumptions in terms of what your experience level is with Adobe Experience Manager. It is my assumption that you've completed AEM Authoring Fundamentals here on Pluralsight.com. If you haven't, I would strongly suggest going back to that course and taking it before this course, or as you look at the table of contents of that course, if you feel you have equivalent working experience, then you're all set to take this class. In AEM Authoring Fundamentals, we talk about how you can install an author instance and publish instance of AEM. Based upon that example, we're going to be using the author instance and publish instance that we set up in that course in this course. So if you don't currently have an instance on your machine, I would check back with this first course before continuing on with this current course. So I'm assuming at this point you don't have either instance running on your system, so let's do that together. I'll hide the browser, and what I'll do is come into the Finder, and in the Applications section within the Finder, we have an AEM directory that we set up. And we have two different directories within this folder, one called Author, the other called Publish. We're going to need both instances running, but for right now, and to save a little bit of time, in this video, I'm just going to start the Author instance. And you do that by double-clicking this jar file. I'll go ahead and double-click it. It only takes a couple of minutes. It doesn't take as long as actually installing Experience Manager, but once it's up and running, you'll be able to verify that in your web browser. You'll notice it started, and it immediately brought you to the Experience Manager login where you can enter your credentials. Now, chances are you're using this default admin login for this instance that you're running on your machine. Go ahead and type in admin for the username and password and sign in, and that will bring you to the projects screen of Adobe Experience Manager. Let's begin to understand the template creation process. When creating a page, you need to select a template, and this will be the basis for the new page in terms of its structure, any initial content, and the components that can be used within that page. We're going to introduce something called the template editor, and with the template editor, creating and maintaining templates is no longer a developer-only task. A power author, for example, can now be involved in the process as well. Developers will still be required to set up the environment, create client libraries, and create the components to be used. However, once these basics are in place, the author has the flexibility to create and configure templates without a development project iteration. Creating a new template requires collaboration, and for this reason, the role is indicated for each task. Depending on how your instance is configured, it might be useful to be aware that Adobe Experience Manager now provides two basic types of templates, and we'll review those types in just a moment. It's also important to understand that these types don't impact how you actually use the templates, but rather it impacts the type of template you can create and how that resulting page relates to its template. So in order for us to proceed, the first thing that I want to review are the roles. Creating a new template using the templates console and the template editor requires collaboration between an admin, developer, and a template author. The admin's role will define the required access rights. In order for someone to create a new folder for the templates, they need these admin rights. Then we have the developer, who will set up the initial environment and create the components to be used within the template. They'll provide the template author with some required information as well. So that does bring up the third and final role, which is the template author. The template author creates templates using the template editor, and they configure the use of the components within the page. Template authors are part of a members group, which allocates the required privileges and permissions to author these templates. Next, we'll talk about the template types. And remember, there are two. First, we'll review editable templates. Editable templates are created and maintained by authors. They allow you to define the structure, initial content, and content policies for a page. Editable templates maintain a dynamic connection between the template and the pages. The next type of templates, of course, are static templates. Static templates are defined and maintained by developers. They share the same design structure as the page, and there's no dynamic connection once the page is created. In order for us to get started, we're going to be working with the Templates console. The Templates console is available from Tools within the General section. The Templates console allows your template authors to create a new template, either from scratch or by copying an existing template, and also manage the template lifecycle. I think with this information, we're ready to jump into Adobe Experience Manager and look at how we can go about creating a new template. Well, I think we're ready to create the template. Before we do, however, I just want to point out that I'm using the We Retail implementation that we installed in the previous course, AEM Authoring Fundamentals. If you did not do that, I would strongly encourage you to go back to that course and look at the necessary steps that you need to take to install this implementation. AEM Authoring Fundamentals is available here on Pluralsight. The other thing that I will say is, as we build things in each of these clips, you want to be sure to follow along because we're going to continue to build on these projects throughout the course. So I just want you to be able to pick up where you left off in the previous clip on the new clip that you're watching. So hopefully that makes sense. With that, I think we're ready to create our template. I'm going to come up to Product Navigation by clicking on the Adobe Experience Manager logo up here in the top left-hand corner. And from here, I'm going to come down and select Tools. And from the Tools section, I'm then going to come over and click Templates. This will bring us to the Templates section. And we want to enter the We Retail folder, so we can click or tap that if you're working on a touch-enabled device. Once you're inside the We Retail directory, what we want to do is create a new template. So I'm going to come up to the Create button and click it. And once I click the Create button, I'll be brought to the Create Template, Pick a Template screen, and we want to pick the We Retail Empty Page template. Once you select it, you can then come over and click Next. When you click Next, you have to title your template. In this case, we're going to title the template Training Template. Now, if you're working on an instance with your colleagues or other trainees, I would suggest being a little bit more specific with your title. In my case, Training Template will be fine, but you may want to append your initials or some other unique identifier so you can easily identify your template within the environment. You can also provide a description, and I'll just type in template for training. And once you're done adding the title and the description, you can come over and click Create. At that point, you should have success and the template will be created. For now, we'll just come over and click Done. Well, I think we're ready to create the template. Before we do, however, I just want to point out that I'm using the We Retail implementation that we installed in the previous course, AEM Authoring Fundamentals. If you did not do that, I would strongly encourage you to go back to that course and look at the necessary steps that you need to take to install this implementation. AEM Authoring Fundamentals is available here on Pluralsight. The other thing that I will say is, as we build things in each of these clips, you want to be sure to follow along because we're going to continue to build on these projects throughout the course. So I just want you to be able to pick up where you left off in the previous clip on the new clip that you're watching. So hopefully that makes sense. With that, I think we're ready to create our template. I'm going to come up to Product Navigation by clicking on the Adobe Experience Manager logo up here in the top left-hand corner. And from here, I'm going to come down and select Tools. And from the Tools section, I'm then going to come over and click Templates. This will bring us to the Templates section, and we want to enter the We Retail folder, so we can click or tap that if you're working on a touch-enabled device. Once you're inside the We Retail directory, what we want to do is create a new template. So I'm going to come up to the Create button and click it, and once I click the Create button, I'll be brought to the Create Template, Pick a Template screen, and we want to pick the We Retail Empty Page template. Once you select it, you can then come over and click Next. When you click Next, you have to title your template. In this case, we're going to title the template Training Template. Now, if you're working on an instance with your colleagues or other trainees, I would suggest being a little bit more specific with your title. In my case, Training Template will be fine, but you may want to append your initials or some other unique identifier so you can easily identify your template within the environment. You can also provide a description, and I'll just type in template for training. And once you're done adding the title and the description, you can come over and click Create. At that point, you should have success and the template will be created. For now, we'll just come over and click Done. At this point, after creating a template, you're ready to begin editing that template, and that all starts with the template editor. Now, you're already familiar with how you can go about editing a page. The process is very similar. You're just going to be modifying and editing a template. What does the template editor give you the ability to do? Well, it allows you to add the initial components to a page to give that page structure. You can also use the template editor to pre-configure any components that you have added to the template. The template editor also allows you to define and configure editable components that authors can then interact with when creating pages based upon the template. You can also control what components the author will be allowed to use when creating pages from the template. And finally, using AEM's layouting mode, you can set up the template to handle responsive experiences for different screen sizes. Much like a page, the template editor has different modes for different tasks. We have the structure mode, the initial content mode, and the layouting mode. The structure mode is for building structure with components. When you build this structure and you add these components, the components can either be locked or unlocked. When the components are locked, you can add content. However, page authors building pages based upon this template cannot edit the components. You can unlock components to allow you to define initial content. Which brings us to the next mode, which is the initial content mode. Again, I'll reiterate that if you have a component that's unlocked, you can define the initial content that will be copied to any page based upon this template. These unlocked components on the pages based upon the template can be modified. That then brings us to the third mode, which is the layouting mode. Here, you can predefine the template layout for the required device format. I will say that when we were initially learning about layouting mode in the previous course, I mentioned that the template had an embedded layout container and that we could drag components into that container. When we build templates, we start with a blank page in a single layout container component. We then use that layout container to add additional components to it. These components can add site structure like headers or footers, or components we expect the authors to interact with. If we want authors to drag out components onto the page, we have to provide them with a layout container component. The layout container component is also what allows us to use the responsive grid for a responsive design. The layout container component is the foundation for all of our templates. Another element I want to talk about are content policies. Content policies are used to connect the predefined page policies to a page. These page policies define the various design configurations. Some components come with a design configuration that allows you to pre-configure its behavior on the pages based upon the template. The content policies allow you to assign such a configuration to the selected component. Based upon all this information, which I know for a fact will make more sense as we begin to use it, we're going to jump into a demonstration where we're going to start working with the template editor for the template that we set up in the previous clip. To start working with the template editor, what we're going to do is come over and open the training template that we created just a moment ago. So as I hover over this card, you'll notice I have a little icon with a pencil on it. This will allow me to open it. Of course, if you're in a different view, you'll have to select this template, and then from the Actions toolbar, you'll see this same icon. Either way, this will bring you into the template editor. You'll see this window which describes some of the functionality of this editor, which we don't need because we're going to review it together. So I'll come down and click Skip. And for my purposes, I'm going to choose Don't Show Again. That will get rid of it. And here you can see we have a blank template. What we're going to do is fill it with different components to define the page structure, which will establish what the pages will actually be when we create pages from this template. So the first thing that we want to do is add a page header and footer. We're also going to add a title component. If we come up to the top left-hand corner, you'll see this little icon, and if you click it, it'll open up the side panel. From here, we have the Components browser, and we also have an Assets browser. Right now, we're going to focus on the Components browser, and you'll notice that we have a filter text field where we can search for particular components. Furthermore, we can refine or filter the components that we're looking at based upon these categories here. Because this is a blank template, we clearly need to add some structure to it. So we're going to come over to the We Retail Structure section, and you'll notice that the components filter to show you only the components associated with We Retail Structure. There's still quite a few, and what we're looking for, of course, is the header and footer components. So you can use this filter text field to start typing in header, and once you press return or enter, you'll notice that the list filters, and we can now see the page header. We're going to drag this header into this component placeholder. When you let go of the mouse, you should see the header. Now, we want to do the same thing for the footer, but of course the footer needs to go below the header. Let's first find it by deleting the word header in the search text field, and then we can type in footer and press return or enter, and sure enough, that component appears. Now we can drag this underneath our header component, and you can see as you drag and hover over these different areas where it's going to go. Is it going to go into the layout container, the root, or is it going to go into this placeholder? For our purposes, we're going to go into this placeholder, and you'll now see the footer appear below the header. The next thing that we're looking for is the title component. In this case, we can switch away from the retail structure component set and come over to all components. Then we can do a search, and we're going to search for title. I'll type in title and press return or enter, and sure enough, we see the title component. We're going to drag this title component between the two components we've already added, which is in between the header and the footer. And you can see this bar appear between them. When you let go of the mouse, you'll see the title appear. The next thing that we want to do is we want to add a layout container underneath our title container. So again, I'm going to update this filter text field with the word layout, and you could type in layout container, but layout will filter it enough for you to find that component. You want to drag this component underneath the title component. And again, these highlights are indicating where this is going to end up. Notice as I hover over title, title becomes highlighted. Once it's highlighted, I can see an arrow pointing down. Right now it's pointing up, now it's pointing down. We want it to be pointing down, meaning that this container will appear underneath the title container. When you let go of the mouse, you'll notice that the layout container is placed. So far this looks pretty good. The only issue is everything is locked at this point, and we don't want the header and the footer to be modified when authors create pages based upon this template, so that's good. Likewise, the title component doesn't necessarily need to be editable either, and the reason for that is by default it will display the page title. The layout container, however, needs to be editable. If it's not, then our template's kind of pointless because when authors create new pages based upon this template, they won't be able to modify it in any way. To make this more useful, we'll have to unlock the layout container and assign it a content policy so that it has a list of allowed components that authors can place inside of it when they're creating pages based upon it. So what we want to do is select the layout container. You can see a little marker here. When you click it, you'll see a toolbar appear. Here inside the toolbar on the far right, you'll see a little padlock icon. If you click this, you'll unlock the structure component. And you'll notice that the message now reads within this placeholder that no allowed components are available for this layout container. What we need to do is modify the content policy. Now, we can use an existing policy or create our own policy. If we were to create our own policy, we would have to further define what components would be acceptable for this layout container. But we're going to use an existing content policy. In order for us to access that content policy, you need to select the layout container again. You'll see a different toolbar, and the middle icon allows you to establish the content policy. So when you click it, a new window will appear. From the drop-down menu, instead of creating a new policy, we can choose from an existing policy. And the policy we want to use is the We Retail default policy. So come over here and select it, and you'll notice that the title and the description get populated based upon that policy that you chose from the menu. The final thing you have to do is validate this by coming up to the top right-hand corner and clicking the check mark. Once you click the check mark, you'll be returned to the screen, and you'll see all the available components that can be placed in this layout container when authors create pages based upon this template. And again, that's because the content policy we selected in the previous dialog box defines these components as acceptable components to be used within this container. So at this point, I think we're in pretty good shape with our template. What we're going to do in the next clip is enable this template for use, and then we'll create a page based upon this template. Before enabling this template, I just want to point out how you could go about creating your own content policy. Because right now, the content policy that we're using for this layout container allows us to use these particular components. And I just want you to truly understand how these content policies are created. So I'm going to select the layout container, and when I do, I'm going to click the policy button, and that's going to open up this dialog box. In this case, instead of selecting We Retail Default, I'm just going to come over here and click the plus sign to create a new policy. When I create a new policy, I have to name it. And I'll just go ahead and name it Plural Site in this case. If I want to give it a description, I could do the same. And again, I'm not super creative right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and type in Plural Site one more time. After doing that, you would click the checkbox. And when you click the checkbox, you'll notice that no components are allowed. Even though we established a content policy, our content policy hasn't been established in any meaningful way. So I'm going to select this layout container again, and this time I'm going to come over and click the brush. When you click the brush, you can go into this mode where you can design the content policy. So here you would establish what components would be allowed. You can expand an entire section and pick and choose, or you can select the entire section. So in this case, I'll select all of the general components, and I'll also scroll down until I find the We Retail components. So down here, eventually, you'll find the We Retail components. I'll go ahead and select that, and then I'll click OK. And once you click OK, you'll notice all of these other elements are now allowed within this component. So hopefully that gives you a better understanding as to how you can go about creating your own content policies. I'll come over here and select the container again. I'll click the policy button one more time. And again, I'm going to return this to the We Retail default, which we had it set to originally. Then I'll come over and click the check mark. So we're all set there in terms of this component. What we want to do is come back to the templates console. So I'm just going to come back over here to AEM, and I'm going to refresh this by pressing return or enter so it loads again. You'll notice right now our template is still here. It's set to a draft. But now what we can do is click these three little dots, and you'll notice you can choose Enable. When you click Enable, you'll get a dialog box asking you if you really want to enable the template. We do in this case, so I'll click Enable, and now the template is enabled, and we can create pages based upon this template, which is exactly what we're going to do next. Now that we spent a good amount of time creating our template, let's create a new page based upon that template. We're going to come up to Product Navigation, and you want to make sure you're inside the Navigation section. Then you want to come over to Sites, and inside of Sites, you want to select the We Retail site. In there, you want to go into United States and then English, and then at that point, we're ready to create a new page. So in the top right-hand corner, click Create, and then select Page. This will bring us to the page where we can choose our template. Down here towards the bottom, you'll see that we have our training template. Go ahead and select it. Then you can come up and click Next. This will give you the opportunity to title the page. And in this case, all we're really going to worry about is the title. And we're just going to call it Training Page. And then we can come up to the top and click Create. This will create the page. We should see a dialog box saying that it has successfully been created. Let's come over and click Open to open that page. This will bring us into the editor, and what we want to do is edit this page. So in the top right, you want to make sure that you're in the edit mode. If not, come over here and select Edit. And at that point, we want to be inside of our Components browser. Inside the Components browser, we're going to look for the text component. You can either do that here by typing in text, and then once you press return or enter, you'll see that component. The other option is to select this placeholder and click the plus sign, and from here you can choose text. Either way, it will add a text component. You then want to add some text to this component, so with it selected, you can then come over and click the little pencil icon, and then you can type in some text. I'm just going to go ahead and type in, add some text here. And then when you're done, you can click the check mark. So we were able to successfully create a page based upon the template that we created, and we were able to add some components to this page. In the next clip, we're going to take a look at how we can edit the template after we've already created pages based upon that template. Even though you've created a page based upon a template, you can still modify the template. However, if you modify the template, any pages that are based upon that template will also be updated. I hope that makes sense, but it certainly will after you see it in action. So let's come back to Adobe Experience Manager. I'm inside the Sites console. What I want to do is click on Product Navigation so I can come over to the Tools. Inside the Tools, under the General section, we want to click on Templates. And at that point, we want to go into the We Retail folder. Down towards the bottom, you should see the training template that we set up. If you hover over it, you can click the Open button to modify it further. This will open up the editor for the template. You'll notice you have a message up here towards the top. It's simply telling you that because this isn't in draft mode anymore, you might have pages that are already based upon this template. And if you edit the structure here in the template, that will impact any pages that reference it. And that's fine. If we scroll down between this first layout container that we have and the footer, what I'd like to do is place a button component. So I'm going to come over to the Components browser. I'm going to switch the menu to the We Retail category. Then I'm going to type in button in the filter text field. When I press return or enter, we see the We Retail button. I'm just going to click and drag this and place it just above the footer. When I let go of the mouse, you can see the button. Let's go ahead and select that component. When you select it, you can click the little wrench to configure configure the component. This will open up a dialog box, and here you can specify a button label. Here I'm going to type in become a member. In this case, I'm not really worried about hyperlinking it anywhere. I just want to show you that the button will show up on the page that we've already created based upon this template. So I'm going to come over and click the check mark. Once this saves, we can come back to the training page. You're going to have to refresh it, and when you refresh it, you'll notice that the Become a Member button now appears within this page. So as you can see, if you make a change or a modification to a template itself, if you have pages based upon that template, those pages will be updated by that change. It's also possible to define initial content for a template, which will be copied over to any new page based upon the template. So let's take a look at how we can work with initial content. You'll notice I'm still working inside the training template that we set up earlier. I'm going to come up to the top right-hand corner and change the mode from structure to initial content. Once you do that, you'll see the layout container here in the center. And what we want to do is place some category teaser components in here. So it is important that we're inside the We Retail components. Then you can type in category and you can do a search, and sure enough, the category teaser appears. Just click and drag that and drop it into our layout container. We're going to add 2 more of these category teasers. So I'll click and drag and place it underneath the first, and then I'll click and drag and place it under the second. So we have 3 altogether. Let's select the first one up top, this category teaser. When you select it, you should see the toolbar appear up here towards the top. Let's configure it. When you click configure, a dialog box appears, and you'll notice that we can add some content. The first thing that we can add is an image. That's what we're concerned about mostly, is adding this image. But we also want to label the button down here towards the bottom. So we're going to display different categories of products for this particular website. So we have women's wear, men's wear, and also sporting equipment. So we're going to come over to the Assets browser, and inside the Assets browser, you want to make sure that we're looking at images. And the first image that we want will be a picture of a woman or some women wearing some women's wear that we sell. So up here towards the top, I'll type in women, then I'll press return or enter, and I'll find an image that I like. I'll grab this one and drop it into the dialog box. Then we have to provide a button label. And I'm just going to go ahead and type in women's, and then I'll type in a £sign for a placeholder hyperlink. When you're done doing this, you can come up to the top and click the check mark, and you can see the image appears. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for this content teaser. With it selected, we'll click configure. Now we need an image. For menswear, so I'll go ahead and type in men and press return or enter. When I find an image that I like, I'll just click and drag it into the dialog box. Then I'll scroll down and I'll type in men's for the label, and I'll type a sign in the link to text field as a placeholder for the hyperlink. Again, I'll come up to the top and click the check mark. We need to do this one more time for equipment, so I'll select this content teaser component. I'll click the little wrench to configure it. Then I'm going to do an image search for equipment, so I'll go ahead and type that in. And after typing it in, I'll get some results. And once I find some equipment that I like, I'll drag and drop it into the panel. And then I'm going to label the button equipment, and again, a £sign as a placeholder for the hyperlink. Then I'll come over and click the check mark. And now we have all 3 of these components configured within the template. Now, like I said, any new pages that we create based upon this template will contain this content. So let's take a look. I'm going to come back to AEM. I'm already in the templates section, but I don't need to be in the template section. I need to be in the sites section because we're going to create a new page based upon the template. So let's come over to product navigation. And from here, we want to be in the navigation section. We'll come over to sites. And then, of course, we're going to go into the We Retail site. Once we're inside the We Retail site, we'll go into United States, English, and from here, we'll create a new page. So when you click the Create button, you can choose Page, and if you scroll down, you can select the training template that we set up, and then you can click Next. Of course, here you have to title the page. We'll call it Page 1, and then we'll come over and click Create. You'll notice that it successfully creates the page. We can click Open so we can take a look at it. You'll notice that we have a page with all of those components populated with content. In the next clip, we'll take a look at how we can improve the layout by using the Layout Editor. The next step here is to adjust the content to accommodate different screen sizes. And we can do that here inside the template. Remember, I'm still working with the template file that we've been working with over the last couple clips by coming into the layouting mode. Up here towards the top, we can switch over to the layouting mode, and you'll see the emulator appear, allowing us to preview what this content will look like on different size screens. Here in the desktop view, instead of having these category teasers fill up the entire width of the page, I'd rather have all three appear side by side. Well, that's easy to do. All we have to do is select it, and when we do, we get these resize handles. I'll just click and drag to the left, and when I let go of the mouse, it's resized. I want to do that for each of them, so I'm going to select the second one, then I'll click and drag and have it appear the same size. And the same thing with this third one. I'll just click and drag and have it appear the same size. So this looks nice on the desktop. But let's take a look at the smallest possible screen. And we can do that by clicking on this iPhone 5 link. It looks terrible. What we should do is have each of these category teasers occupy the full width of the screen. So I'll select the first one. I'll click and drag to the right. And it does that. I'll do the same thing for men's here. I'll select it. Click and drag to the right, and now it takes up the whole width of the screen. Then I'll select equipment, and I'll do the same thing. I'll click and drag to the right, and now it occupies the full width of the screen. Let's come over to iPad. Here on iPad, I think we could maybe make one occupy the full width of the screen, and then have the other two appear side by side underneath it. So with this selected, I'll click and drag this over to the right, so it occupies the entire width. Then I'm going to increase men's, and I'll also increase equipment. So with this selected, I'll click and drag this over to the right. So this is a better layout for iPad. We have one large category teaser and then two decent sized category teasers underneath it. So now we have a different view for desktop, 3 side by side, iPad, 1 large and 2 side by side, and then one for iPhone 5 where all 3 are stacked on top of one another. So using the layouting mode, we're able to adjust the layout of our content within our templates. In this module, I'm going to introduce you to some advanced topics when it comes to authoring content inside of Adobe Experience Manager. We're going to start this off by talking about design mode. Now, in a previous clip, when we were working with the content policy for a component within a template, we were able to establish what components we would allow to be placed within that component. Well, behind the scenes, we were actually adjusting that page's design. And that's what we're going to focus on in this clip, something called design mode. The importance here, though, is to remember that we're talking about this at the page level, not necessarily the template level. So in a page, when you're editing the page, you'll notice that you have a design option available to you. Not only do you have edit, layouting, so on and so forth, but you do have a design option. Now, this gets a little technical, but I hope this clears up some questions that may be brewing. The dynamic behavior of pages allows the adding or removing of components from the page's paragraph system or parses. The parses is a compound component that contains all other paragraph components. When you drag components onto a page, you're really dragging them into a parses. The layout container component, which we've been working with extensively in the past few clips, is an extension of the default parses component. You define configuration per page component. If child pages use the same template and or page component, which is usually the case, then the same configuration will be applied to the corresponding paragraph system. In the following demo, what we'll do is take a quick look as to how we can switch to design mode. Then we'll look at how we can select a paragraph system and alter that paragraph system's design. So let's go ahead and jump back into AEM. I'm inside the Site module in the English section of the We Retail site. What I'd like to do is enter page 1, a page that we created from the template we were working with earlier. As you hover over it, you'll see the Open button. Go ahead and click it to open up the AEM editor. What we're going to do is use design mode to gain access to a component that's not currently available. If I scroll down here on page 1, I have a component placeholder. If I decide I want to add a component here, I can come over to the component browser and search for it. Right now it's set to all, meaning I'll be searching all the components available to this page. So let's say I'm looking for a download component. I'll type it in and you'll notice no results are found. What I can do now is I can go into the design mode and I can change the paragraph system. In the top right-hand corner, I'm going to switch the edit mode to the design mode. Now when you do that, nothing really changes. But if I select this component placeholder, you'll notice I only have one option here, which is parent, which will select the parent container. At that point, I get one more option, which is this little wrench, allowing me to configure it. When I click configure, a dialog box will open, and this is the same dialog box we were working with when we set up a content policy for a component within a template. But here, you can see the allowed components section, and right now, we have a layout container under the general components. If I collapse general and scroll all the way down, you'll also see that I have access to the We Retail components. But I want that download button. So if I scroll all the way back up to the general components, inside the general components, there is a download button. I'll click it and then I'll click OK. At that point, I'll come back to the edit mode. By clicking this little arrow, a menu will appear. I can choose Edit. At this point, if I look for the Download button, I'll go ahead and type in Download in the filter text field. I'll press Return or Enter. You'll notice it's now available. Now, this isn't happening on this one individual page. If I come back to AEM Sites and I open up Training Page, another page that we created based upon that template, and I open it, if I do a search within the component browser for that download button, sure enough, it will be available. You may find the paragraph system somewhat confusing when you're working in AEM. The more you're exposed to it and the more that you work with it, it begins to make more and more sense. But as a new user, I would encourage you to explore the design mode. Anytime you try to access a component that's not available to you, you can go into the design mode and make some decisions about what you want that paragraph system to be. We're now going to talk about how we can create and manage content fragments. Adobe Experience Manager content fragments allow you to design, create, curate, and use page-independent content. Think about the number of communication channels you have to deal with. You probably don't want to use the exact same content for all channels. You need to optimize your content according to the specific channel. With content fragments, you can consider how to reach target audiences efficiently across these channels. You can create and manage channel-neutral editorial content. For example, text, images, and video can be included within the fragment. You can build content pools for a range of channels, and you can design content variations for specific channels. Think about a situation where you have an article, and you want a version of that article to be visible on your website, on your mobile app, and maybe even on a projector within a retail location. It doesn't make sense to send the same piece of content for all of these applications. Instead, you can make variations of your fragment optimized for each of these use cases. Content fragments are stored as assets. They can be created and maintained from the Assets console. Any variations that you create from the fragment are also stored within the assets. They're used in the page editor by means of the content fragment component, which is a referencing component. The content fragment component is available to page authors. It allows them to reference the required content fragment. Content fragments are content types that contain one or more text elements or references associated assets like images, videos, and even other fragments. They're independent from the delivery mechanism, whether it be a page or a channel. They can contain variations of master elements to adjust fragment text according to the specific editorial or channel requirements. They also have a hierarchical structure. The content fragment would be the parent node, the element would be the child node, and content fragments are defined by a fragment template. Let's talk about the components of a content fragment. Content fragments are made up of fragment elements such as text assets, variations, which are renditions of fragment text that are specific to editorial purposes, fragment paragraphs, fragment metadata, associated content, and this content is external to but still relevant to the fragment, and the fragment template, which defines the structure of the fragment. And finally, there's the content fragment component, which is responsible for layout and delivery of the fragment. What we're going to do is jump into a demo, and in this demo, we're going to create content fragments. We're going to create variations from those fragments, and we'll look at how we can add a fragment to a page. Now that we spent some time talking about content fragments, let's go ahead and create a content fragment. In order for us to do this, we need to be inside of the Assets module. So if you click on Product Navigation, you can then come over and click on Assets. And what we want to do here is get into the We Retail folder. Once you're inside the We Retail folder, we can create a new folder to hold our content fragments. So in the top right, we can click the Create button, then we can choose Folder. We have to title this folder. I'm going to go ahead and title it Content Fragments, and you'll notice that the name is automatically generated for you. Once you create it, you will see the new folder appear within the window. Go ahead and click it to enter it, and at this point, we can come up to the Create button, and we can choose Content Fragment to create a new content fragment. This will bring us to another screen where we have to specify the template that we want to use. In this case, there's only one, which is Simple Fragment, so we'll select it. Then you can come up to the top right and click Next. At this point, you have to title the content fragment, and we're going to title it Training CF for Content Fragment. And we can go ahead and just give a brief description. I'll type in example of content fragments, and then you can come over and click Create. So this will create the content fragment. What we want to do here is open it. When we open it, this will bring us into the editor where we can edit the content fragment. So I'm just going to paste a couple paragraphs here that I had stored on the clipboard. And you'll notice that we can work with not only rich text, but also plain text and even markdown. We want to use rich text in this case, and we can apply some basic formatting. For example, I can select these three elements here, and I can make either an ordered or an unordered list. I'll go ahead and use bullets here. Again, if I want to select something else, I could make it bold. I could apply whatever formatting that I wanted using these options. At this point, if you wanted to make a variation, you can do that as well. Let's say we wanted to create an app version of this fragment. Well, we can come up to the Variations section, and from here, we can click Create Variation down here towards the bottom, and we need to title it. I'm going to go ahead and type in App for the title, and I'll give it a description for use within our app. And then you can click Add. At that point, you're inside the variation. So I'm just going to select this paragraph down here towards the bottom and delete it. So I'm just going to click and drag to select it. I'll press Delete to get rid of it. Now the app version only has this first paragraph and this bulleted list. When you're done, you can come up to the top right-hand corner and click the check mark, and the fragment will be saved. Now, what we want to do is look at how we can add this fragment to a document. So again, using product navigation, I'm going to come over to the navigation panel, and then I'll click Sites. We do want to enter the We Retail site. Then we want to go into United States and English. And from here, I'm just going to open up one of these pages that we are working with. I'll open up the training page. When you open up the training page, you'll notice that we have a component here. We can add a content fragment component. So I'm going to come over to the content browser. Within the content browser, I'm going to filter looking for the content fragment container. I'll just go ahead and drop this into that component placeholder. Now I can add our content fragment to this content fragment component. Remember, content fragments are assets, so we'll come over to the Assets browser. Instead of looking at images, we'll select content fragments from this list, and we see the new content fragment that we created, which is Training CF. If we want to use it, we can drag and drop it into that content fragment component. Now you'll notice that the content fragment here has several other component placeholders for us to add some additional content. But at this point, we have the content fragment in the page. Yes, you can edit the content fragment from here. If you select the content fragment itself, you can then come up and click Edit. When you click Edit, you'll be brought into the content fragment editor. You'll notice that you get a message here telling you that the content fragment is already referenced in a page, and the changes that you make here will affect that page. So let's make some basic changes. I'll select some more text, and with this text selected, I'll make it bold. I'll also select this list here, and I'll italicize the text. After doing that, we can come up and click the check mark. After clicking the check mark, you'll save it, and you can come back to that training page that we were working with, and you can refresh or reload it. And when you do, you'll see that the content fragment has been updated with our bold text and italic text. Finally, if you decide that you want to use a variation of the fragment, select the fragment, and you can click this Configure button. With the Configure button, a dialog box will open, and you'll notice here you can choose a variation from this menu. In this case, I'll choose App, then I'll click the check mark, and you'll notice that we're using the App variation of the content fragment. Let's talk about creating and managing workflows. Workflows allow you to automate Adobe Experience Manager activities. A workflow consists of a series of steps completed in a specific order. Each step performs a distinct activity, such as activating a page or sending an email message. Workflows can interact with assets in the repository, user accounts, and services. For example, a key application of Adobe Experience Manager is Web Content Management, which allows you to generate and publish pages to your website. This functionality is often subject to organizational processes, including steps such as approval and sign-offs by participants. Workflows can represent these processes, which in turn can be defined within Adobe Experience Manager and then applied to the appropriate content pages. Many useful workflow models are provided in Adobe Experience Manager out of the box. In addition, you can create and define any number of custom workflow models tailored to the specific needs of your project using the Workflow console. This image is a sample workflow used to delete a page in Adobe Experience Manager. Workflow objects contain several different parts, but if we look at this, you can definitely see a node and transition structure. The nodes would be the flow start and the flow end, and the transitions would be the steps in between. Let's talk a little bit more about that in terms of what the workflow objects are and how they behave. A workflow is associated with several different objects, the first of which is the model. The model comprises nodes and transitions, and the transitions connect the nodes and define the flow. The model always has a start node and an end node. Steps is an object within the workflow model that consists of a series of different types that can be extended with scripts to provide the functionality and control you require. Next is transitions, which defines the link between two consecutive steps. You can apply rules to a transition. Then we have work item, which is an object that represents a task or action in the workflow system. A workflow instance can have more than one workflow item at a time. Next, we have payload, which is an entity upon which a workflow instance acts. For example, a page in Adobe Experience Manager could be passed from step to step as a payload. Then we have lifecycle. A workflow begins when it's started and ends when the end node is processed. You can apply the following actions on a workflow: terminate, suspend, resume, and restart. Completed and terminated instances are archived. The last thing that I want to talk about is something called inbox. Users have their own workflow inbox in which the assigned work items are accessible. The work items are assigned either to a specific user itself or to the group to which the user belongs. Let's jump into AEM and begin exploring the workflow console so we can familiarize ourselves with the different options available. Now that we know a little bit more about workflows, it's important to know that Adobe Experience Manager provides several tools and resources for creating workflow models, developing workflow steps, and for programmatically interacting with workflows. The Workflow Console is a centralized location for managing your workflows. To access the Workflow Console, come up to Product Navigation, and from here you can click on Tools. You'll notice on the left-hand side, you have several different categories. The category we're interested in is Workflow. When you click it, you'll notice that you have 5 different cards, the first of which is Models. If you click Models, you'll enter the Workflow Models screen, and here you have the opportunity to create new models, or if you select a model, you'll be able to edit the workflow, start the workflow, or delete the workflow. I'll come over here and exit out of this action bar and return back to the previous screen. You'll also notice that we have instances, and if you click instances, you'll get information about any workflow that's currently in progress. At this point, we don't, but if we did, you would have the opportunity to terminate it, suspend it, open history, and also rename it. Again, let's return back to the previous screen. Let's now come over and click Launchers. When you click Launchers, you'll be brought to a screen that allows you to define a workflow to launch if a specific event occurs in Adobe Experience Manager. You can also create new launchers from this screen. If you come over and select a launcher, you'll notice you get an Actions toolbar where you can view properties or delete it. Again, I'll exit out of this by clicking the X and return back to the previous screen. Let's come down and take a look at Archive. When you click Archive, you'll be able to access details of workflow instances that have completed or terminated. You can view the history of a workflow instance by clicking on it and then choosing Open History. Again, I'll come over and click the X to exit out of this and then return back to the previous screen. Finally, you can come down and click Failures, and this will bring you to a screen displaying any workflows that have failed. Obviously, in this case, we don't, but if you had workflows in here, you'd have the ability to terminate, retry a step, or terminate and retry options to complete the workflow steps. So now that we're comfortable with what a workflow is and how we can interact with a workflow in Adobe Experience Manager, I think we're ready in the next clip to begin looking at how we can create our own workflow model. We're now ready to create, edit, and use a workflow model to automate the page publishing process. In order for us to do that, we're going to come up to Product Navigation, then we'll come over to Tools, and from there we'll click Workflow. At that point, we want to enter Models, and here inside the Workflow Models screen, we can create a new workflow model. So I'm going to come over to the Create button, and from the Create button, I'm going to choose the Create Model command. This will open up the Add Workflow window. Here we have to title it. I'm going to title it Request for Publishing. After you type in the name for the title, you can come down and click Done. That will create the new workflow model, and you will see it appear up here in the top left-hand corner because it's new. Now that we have it, we want to do something with it. So I'm going to select this little check mark. Then I'll come up to the top left and click Edit to go into the content editor. You'll notice right now we have a flow start and a flow end. You'll also notice that we have step 1. If you double click step 1, it'll open up the step properties dialog box. Here in the common tab, we're going to title this Validate Content. Then we can also provide a description. I'll type in this step is used to validate content of a page. Next, we want to come over to the User Group tab. The first option is the user group. Right now it's set to admin, but you could choose the user you want to assign to this step or task. If you come over and click the little magnifying glass, you can select any one of these users. If you know the user's name, you can type it into this text field. Right now, we are the admin user, so I'm going to press the Escape key to collapse that menu, and I'm going to assign this task to myself in this case. Once you're happy with these settings, you can click OK. Next, we want to come into the WCM workflow. We can expand that, and you'll notice that we have Activate Page Asset. We're going to click and drag this into the workflow. After you add it to the workflow, you can double-click it to open its properties. We're going to title this Publish Page, and the description will be a process to publish a page. And I'll go ahead and get rid of asset there. In this case, we don't have to make any changes to the Arguments tab, so we can come down and click OK. So if we look at this workflow that we created, starting from the top, we have Flow Start. Then it will go down and ask us to validate the content. After we validate the content, then we'll be asked to publish the page. Now, the mechanism for the page publishing is built in to that workflow option that we dragged into this workflow. So what will happen when we execute this workflow, we'll get a notification within AEM asking us to validate the page. Once we validate it, the next step within the workflow will be to publish the page to the publish instance of AEM. Once you're done making your changes to your workflow, in the top left-hand corner here, you can click Save to save that workflow. Now that we've saved the workflow model, we're going to start the workflow from a page that needs to be published. So I'm going to come back to this tab here, and I'm going to close out of the workflow models. I'm going to come back to product navigation so I can go into the Sites module. So make sure you're over here actually in the navigation section. Then you can click Sites. Once you're in Sites, you want to go into We Retail, United States, English, and then you want to select a page you want to publish. And in this case, if I scroll down, I should see the training page. We're going to open this by clicking the little pencil icon. Now to start the workflow, you want to come up to the very top here and click on the Page Information button, and here you can choose Start Workflow. Clearly, in this menu, we're going to choose the workflow we just created. So as you scroll down, you'll see the Request for Publishing workflow. Go ahead and select it, and you can click Start Workflow, and you'll notice that the workflow has started. Now we're going to come back to AEM, and we're going to come up to the top right-hand corner and click this little Notifications button, and we'll see that we have a notification that's asking us to validate some content. So in this case, I'll come over and click the check mark, and then I'll click Complete, and you'll notice that the next step here is to publish the page. If you want to add some comments, you can. I'll go ahead and type in "looks good." Let's publish. Then you can come over and click Complete again. This just published the page. If we come back to Training Page and refresh it, if we come back up to the top and we click the page information, you'll notice that the page was published 19 seconds ago. Remember, this is the training page. If you want to see that it is published, as long as your publish instance is running, you would be able to ping that server and see it live on the server. So I'll open up a new tab. and I'll type in the address for that page, which is training page. So I'll go ahead and update this URL to training page. When you press return or enter, that page now loads because you published it. So we were able to successfully create and edit a workflow and start the workflow to publish a page in this clip. We're now ready to create, edit, and use a workflow model to automate the page publishing process. In order for us to do that, we're going to come up to Product Navigation, then we'll come over to Tools, and from there we'll click Workflow. At that point, we want to enter Models, and here inside the Workflow Model screen, we can create a new workflow model. So I'm going to come over to the Create button, and from the Create button, I'm going to choose the Create Model command. This will open up the Add Workflow window. Here we have to title it. I'm going to title it Request for Publishing. After you type in the name for the title, you can come down and click Done. That will create the new workflow model, and you will see it appear up here in the top left-hand corner because it's new. Now that we have it, we want to do something with it. So I'm going to select this little check mark, then I'll come up to the top left and click Edit to go into the content editor. You'll notice right now we have a flow start and a flow end. You'll also notice that we have step 1. If you double click step 1, it'll open up the Step Properties dialog box. Here in the Common tab, we're going to title this Validate Content. Then we can also provide a description. I'll type in this step is used to validate content of a page. Next, we want to come over to the User Group tab. The first option is the user group. Right now it's set to admin, but you could choose the user you want to assign to this step or task. If you come over and click the little magnifying glass, you can select any one of these users. If you know the user's name, you can type it into this text field. Right now, we are the admin user, so I'm going to press the Escape key to collapse that menu, and I'm going to assign this task to myself in this case. Once you're happy with these settings, you can click OK. Next, we want to come into the WCM workflow. We can expand that. And you'll notice that we have Activate Page Asset. We're going to click and drag this into the workflow. After you add it to the workflow, you can double click it to open its properties. We're going to title this Publish Page. And the description will be a process to publish a page. And I'll go ahead and get rid of Asset there. In this case, we don't have to make any changes to the Arguments tab, so we can come down and click OK. So if we look at this workflow that we created, starting from the top, we have flow start, then it will go down and ask us to validate the content. After we validate the content, then we'll be asked to publish the page. Now, the mechanism for the page publishing is built in to that workflow option that we dragged into this workflow. So what will happen when we execute this workflow? We'll get a notification within AEM asking us to validate the page. Once we validate it, the next step within the workflow will be to publish the page to the publish instance of AEM. Once you're done making your changes to your workflow, in the top left-hand corner here, you can click Save to save that workflow. Now that we've saved the workflow model, we're going to start the workflow from a page that needs to be published. So I'm going to come back to this tab here, and I'm going to close out of the workflow models. I'm going to come back to Product Navigation, so I can go into the Sites module. So make sure you're over here actually in the navigation section, then you can click Sites. Once you're in Sites, you want to go into We Retail, United States, English, and then you want to select a page you want to publish. And in this case, if I scroll down, I should see the training page. We're going to open this by clicking the little pencil icon. Now, to start the workflow, you want to come up to the very top here and click on the Page Information button, and here you can choose Start Workflow. Clearly, in this menu, we're going to choose the workflow we just created. So as you scroll down, you'll see the Request for Publishing workflow. Go ahead and select it. Then you can click Start Workflow, and you'll notice that the workflow has started. Now we're going to come back to AEM, and we're going to come up to the top right-hand corner and click this little Notifications button, and we'll see that we have a notification that's asking us to validate some content. So in this case, I'll come over and click the check mark, and then I'll click Complete, and you'll notice that the next step here is to publish the page. If you want to add some comments, you can. I'll go ahead and type in "looks good." Let's publish. Then you can come over and click Complete again. This just published the page. If we come back to Training Page and refresh it, if we come back up to the top and we click the page information, you'll notice that the page was published 19 seconds ago. Remember, this is the training page. If you want to see that it is published, as long as your publish instance is running, you would be able to ping that server and see it live on the server. So I'll open up a new tab and I'll type in the address for that page, which is training page. So I'll go ahead and update this URL to training page. When you press return or enter, that page now loads because you published it. So we were able to successfully create and edit a workflow and start the workflow to publish a page in this clip. Launches enable you to efficiently develop the content for a future release of one or more activated web pages. When do you create launches? A launch is created so you can change future publications of a page while maintaining your current page on the active site. After editing and uploading your launch pages, you can promote them back to the source and then activate the source page, the top level page, making it live on the site. Promoting duplicates the launch content back to the source page and can be done either manually or automatically. For example, think about a seasonal products page on your online store, and you update it quarterly so that feature products align with the current season. To prepare for the next quarterly update, you can create a launch of the appropriate web pages. Throughout the quarter, the changes are accumulated in the launch copy. When the next quarter arrives, you promote the launch page so that you can publish the source pages that are holding the updated content. Let's look at launches in a nutshell. Your site content is a hierarchy of pages. You first create a launch, and then you can associate pages from your site to the launch. From there, you can make any edits that you want for this particular launch through the launch version of the page. Finally, you can promote the launch, and the pages from your launch will be the new pages on the site. You can promote all the pages associated with the launch, pages or their children, or only the modified pages. Let's jump back into AEM and take a tour of how we can interact with launches. Before we go into a demo where we actually create a launch together, I just want to make you aware of how you can go about accessing launches inside of AEM. For our purposes, what we're going to do is come up to Product Navigation. And from Product Navigation, you want to move to the Tools section. And within the Tools section, you then want to come over to the Sites category. And here, you'll notice that you can manage content launches. Go ahead and click it, and you'll enter the Launches screen. At this point, we don't have any launches, but this is where you can manage your launches if you do have them. You would have the ability to edit, view properties, promote, clone, and even delete launches from this screen. Clearly, you can also come over to the Create button here in the top right-hand corner and click Create to start creating a launch. I don't want to do this, so I'll click Cancel. I want to show you another location where you can access launches. What you need to do is come back to the Sites console. So I'm going to come over to Product Navigation, and from here I'll click Sites. Once you're in the Sites console, you can create a launch by selecting a source. So for our purposes, I'm going to scroll down and find the We Retail site. Then I'll go into United States, English. And if I select a page, with the page selected, you'll notice you can come to the Create button. You have the option down here to create a launch. Now that you're comfortable with the different options inside of AEM for creating a launch, what we're going to do in the next clip is actually walk through the process of creating a launch, editing the launch, and promoting it. Now it's time to create, edit, and promote a launch. You'll notice I'm in the English section of the We Retail site. What you want to do is find the training page that we set up and select it. With it selected, in the actions bar up top, we can click Create, and from here, we can choose Launch. This will bring us to the launch screen, and what we need to do is select a source. To do that, we're going to select the training page here within this list. Then we're going to come up to the top right-hand corner and click Next. Then we have to specify a launch title, and I'm going to title this New Training Page. And we want to create this new training page with existing content, and we want to inherit source page live data, which will make the launch a live copy, so every update of the source page will automatically be kept in sync with the corresponding launch page. Now let's come up to the top right-hand corner and click Create. You will get a dialog telling you that the launch creation was successful. For now, let's come over and click Done. This will return you back to the English section of the site. Now what we want to do is edit this launch. To edit the launch, you need to come back and select the training page again. With the training page selected, you can come over to the left rail, and if you expand it, you can choose References. And now you'll see that we have one launch in the Copies category. If you select it, it'll show you the new training page launch we just created. If you click on it, you'll get a series of options. In this case, we're going to click Go to Page to go into the AEM editor for this launch. What we're going to do is add some content here. So the first thing that I want to do is come over to the component browser, and I want to find the image component. So I'll type in image. Then I'm going to grab this hero image and drop it just underneath our training page header. After doing that, we can select this component, and then we can configure it. By configuring it, we'll have the ability to add an image. So let's come back to the Assets browser, and here I want to find a large image. I'll go ahead and type in Equipment to filter the images that I'm currently viewing. I'll find an image that I like, and I'll drag and drop it into this dialog box, and then I'll click the check mark to accept the changes, and we should see this image. I'm happy with the changes, so let's come back to the Sites console in AEM. Now remember, we made changes to the page, and if you wanted to see the page live, I have it up and running here on the Publish instance. You'll notice it's not much of anything. Coming back to the Sites console, what I want to do is select the training page again. So I'll scroll down, find the training page, and click the check mark to select it. You'll notice that the left rail is still expanded, and I'm looking at References. Again, I can come over to Launches, and if I click it, you'll notice I see the new training page that was just updated. If I click it again, I get those series of buttons I saw last time, but this time what I want to do is click Promote Launch. When you click Promote Launch, you're brought into the wizard. You'll notice that you have to choose the scope, and in this case, I only want to promote the modified pages. So now I'm going to come up to the top right-hand corner and click Next. I'll have to review this. I do in fact want to promote this training page. I'll click Promote. When I do, that page will be promoted, which means if I come back down and look for the training page and I open that training page, you'll notice that the contents of that page have been updated. Projects let you group resources into one entity. It gives a common, shared environment, which makes it easy to manage your projects. The types of resources you can associate with a project are referred to as tiles in Adobe Experience Manager. Tiles may include project and team information, assets, workflows, and other types of information. Let's talk about the different project title categories. First, we have project information, and this tile has a project title, an owner, and a description on it. Next, we have an assets tile, and this lets you save all of the assets used for a particular project. Then we have experiences, and this lets you add a mobile app, a website, or a digital publication to the project. The team tile lets you specify the members of a project team. Then we have the workflows tile, and this tile lets you assign your project to follow certain workflows. If workflows are running, their status is displayed in the workflows tile. And finally, we have tasks. This lets you monitor the status of any project-related tasks, including workflows. What we're going to do is jump back into AEM and take a look at the Projects console. You can access and manage your projects within Adobe Experience Manager from the Projects console. And remember, the Projects console appears when the application first loads. It's also referred to as the welcome screen in many cases. So let's take a look at the Project console and review the various actions we can perform. Like so many other times when we came into AEM, we were brought here to the Projects console. There's a couple different ways that you can access the project information tile. First and foremost is here directly from the project screen. If we hover over a card, in this case I'll hover over Geometrics Outdoors, if I click on the little eye, this will bring me directly into the Properties tile. Once you click it, you'll see you have information like the title of the project and the description, and also the members associated with this project. I'm going to come up and click Close. And once you click Close, you'll be brought to another screen. And this screen is you being inside of the Geometrics Outdoors project. If I click on the navigation hierarchy, I can always get back to Projects. To enter the project, you can just click on the card and you'll be returned back to this screen. You'll notice we have assets here. And again, assets let you save all of your assets for a particular project. If we come up to the top right-hand corner, we can configure this to a particular path for other assets within the repository. I'll come down here and click Cancel. Like I said earlier, the Experience tile allows you to add a mobile app, a website, or a digital publication for a project. To add more experiences to your project, you would simply click the plus sign, and from here, you would have the ability to create a new experience. Again, I'll just come over here and click Cancel, and I'll be returned to the previous screen. Down towards the bottom, we have a team card, and this team card lets you specify the members of the project team. To modify this, you would click the three little dots down here towards the bottom. It'll bring you to another screen, and here you'd have the ability to add additional users. In this drop-down menu, I can select somebody, and then I can click Add, and you'll notice that that user has been added to the team. You'll also notice that there's a drop-down menu where you can specify their role, whether or not they're owners, observers, or editors. Again, I'm going to come up to the top right-hand corner and click Close to be returned to the previous screen. To assign a new workflow to a project, you would come over to the Workflows card. And within the Workflows card, you would click the plus sign, and from here, it'll bring you to a screen where you can start a workflow. Again, I'll click Cancel to return to the previous screen. You'll also notice that there's three little dots down here in the bottom right-hand corner. If you click this, you'll see any workflows that are running for the project. I'm just going to come up and click the back button to return to the previous screen. If you want to add a new tile to a project, all you have to do is click the Add Tile button. And from here, you can choose what type of tile you want to add to the project. Let's say, for example, we wanted to add a task tile. You would select it, then you would click Submit, and you'll be returned back to the previous screen, and you'll now notice that we have a Tasks tile. So now that we have a better understanding as to what projects are and how we can navigate the project interface, what we're going to do in the next clip is actually walk through the process of creating a new project for our We Retail site. We're now ready to create our own project. You'll notice I'm inside the Projects module. Here inside the Projects module, you want to come up to the Create button, and from the Create button, you can choose Create Project. This will bring you to the Create Project screen, and here you have to specify the template that you want to use. In this case, I'm going to select Media Project. With it selected, you can then come up and click Next. Now you have to provide some information. The title is required, but you can also provide a description, a due date, you can add users to the project, and you can even customize the thumbnail. For our purposes, what I'm going to do is name this project Media and Entertainment. After you type that in, you can then come up and click Create. You'll notice that the project was successfully created. At this point, you can click Open to enter the project. When you enter the project, you'll see all the default tiles associated with the project. If you decide that you want to add another tile, you can do that. All you have to do is come up to the top left-hand corner and click Add Tile. This will bring you to a screen where you can choose the type of tile that you want to add. In this case, I'm going to come over and select Links. With the Links tile selected, you can then come up and click Submit, and you'll notice that we now have a Links tile that's been added to the project. Of course, now at this point, we want to edit this Links tile, and we can do that by adding a link to it. In the top right corner of the tile, we can click the plus sign. In this case, what we're going to do is we're just going to type in a URL like google.com, and then we can also title it if we want. And if you want to provide a thumbnail, you could do that as well. But for our purposes, the URL and the title will suffice. So I'll come up to the top right and click Add Link. Now you'll notice we have a hyperlink here within the Links tile. By default, the Assets tile points to the project's Assets folder. What we're going to do is link the Assets tile to another Assets folder that's found within the Assets console. So over here in the Assets tile, you can click the little gear in the top right-hand corner to configure it. This will open a dialog box showing you the current path of the Assets folder. To change that, we can come over and click this little folder icon to the right of the text field. This gives us the opportunity to browse the repository, and if we scroll down on the far left to the We Retail directory, we can then come over and select the Activities folder. At this point, in the top right-hand corner, we can click the check mark, and then we can click Accept, and the Assets panel has been updated with those Activities assets. Next, we want to add an experience. So let's come over to the Experiences tile and click the plus sign. Here, we have to select the type of experience. On the far left, we'll click the Site option, then we'll click Next. Again, you can browse for a particular folder, or if you know the path, you can enter the path manually. In this case, I know the path, which is content/WeRetail/LanguageMasters/EN. You can then update the title to Main Site. At that point, you can come up and click Add Experience. Before you click Add Experience, if you wanted to update this thumbnail, you certainly could. But nevertheless, let's come over and click Add Experience, and you'll notice that that experience has been added to the tile. Next, we want to initiate a workflow. To do that, we're going to come over to the Workflows tile, and we'll click the plus sign. This will bring us to the Start Workflow screen. We want to select Request Copy. Then we can come over and click Next. Once you click Next, you have to provide some properties. The first is the manuscript title, which we're going to call Add Copy. Then we have to provide a brief. I'll just go ahead and type in New Add Copy. And notice that you have some additional options below, but for right now, I'm just concerned with these two. Then you can click Submit. Once you click Submit, you'll notice that we have a running workflow. Because we have this running workflow, a Tasks tile has been added to the project. Notice down here we see the Tasks tile. If you come down to the bottom and click these three little dots, it'll bring you to a screen showing you the current tasks. Here we have the Add Copy workflow running, and underneath that we have Generate Copy, which is nested underneath. Click the Generate Copy task to open the Task Details screen. The Task Details screen is where users enter information, comment, and work on a task. It has two different tabs. it has task, and then it also has comments. The task tab allows you to edit properties of the task, whereas the comments tab is used to add quick task-related comments or questions. Users can comment on a task even if they're not assigned a task. In any event, we're going to come over to the top right and we're going to click Complete. This will open up a window where you can select the action that you want to complete. In this case, we're going to choose Done, and then we can click Complete. Notice that the task is completed, but a new one is also created, and this is because the workflow moves to the next step in the procedure. Because there's another step, if we move back to the projects console, I can do that by using the navigation hierarchy. In fact, we just want to go into the Media and Entertainment project. You'll notice that the Tasks panel is updated, and it's now displaying 50% because we have one active and one completed. If you wanted to get to 100%, you could re-enter the tasks and complete any tasks that need attention. So hopefully what we've just done here gives you some perspective on how you can go about creating projects in Adobe Experience Manager. Not only can you create projects at this point, but you know how to add members, assign workflows, and obviously perform tasks within these projects. When working inside of Adobe Experience Manager, you'll run into situations where you no longer need a project active, and you can easily deactivate a project. All you have to do here in the Projects module is select a particular project. In this case, I'm going to select the project that we set up in the previous clip, our Media and Entertainment project. With it selected, in the top left, I can click View Properties. And this will bring us to the project properties, and you'll notice that there's a Project Status slider. If you click it, you'll deactivate the project. If I come up to the top right-hand corner and click Save, it'll tell you it's been successfully saved. At that point, I'll close out of this screen, and I'll return back to the Projects console. Once you return to the Projects console, you'll notice that your inactive projects are no longer visible. If you come up to the top right-hand corner, there's a little filter icon. If you click it, you'll notice it will display your inactive projects. If you need to reactivate a project, you basically do the same thing. If you come over and select the project and you click View Properties, at that point you would just change the project status to On. Then you can come up and click Save again. Then you can close out of this screen. Of course, this will bring you to the Media and Entertainment project. At this point, I'll use Product Navigation to get back to Projects, and you'll notice that that project is now available within this console. Tags are a quick and easy method of classifying content within a website. Tags may be thought of as keywords or labels that you can attach to a page, an asset, or other content to maximize searches to find the related content. In Adobe Experience Manager, a tag can be a property of a content node for a page or a metadata node for an asset. We'll be working with the tagging console. In Adobe Experience Manager, the tagging console is used to create and manage tags and their taxonomies. One goal is to avoid many tags that are similar. Tags are managed by grouping them into namespaces. It's certainly useful if you review the usage of existing tags before creating new ones. Tags are powerful organizers. With the ability to create tags and subtags, it becomes possible to express entire taxonomic systems covering terms, subterms, and their relationships. You can create namespaces to sort and organize your tags. With namespaces, you can create categories of tags to make sure that tags that belong together are grouped together. The only restriction for newly created tags is that they must be unique within a specific namespace. Tags improve your search experience. You can search for tags and content that has tags. The default search component in Adobe Experience Manager uses these mechanisms, so you can narrow the results down to those that are relevant. Based on all this information, let's start creating some tags. Remember, in AEM, in order for you to work with tags, you have to come up to Product Navigation, and then you have to select Tools. And from here, you'll notice that we have tagging. Go ahead and click on it. And once you click on it, you'll enter the tag screen, and you'll notice on the left-hand side, we have all these folders. These folders represent namespaces. And if you enter a namespace, you can then see the taxonomic structure of the tags for that namespace. Not only do we have tags, like equipment, but we also have tags that contain several subtags. What we want to do is create our own new namespace. So in the top left, we can click Create Namespace. This will open up a dialog box where we can title the namespace. I'll go ahead and just call this Pluralsight, and you'll notice that the name is automatically attached. You can also provide a description, which I'll type in Training. Then when you click Create, you'll see the new directory on the left-hand side. This is your new namespace. When you select your namespace, you'll notice that it doesn't contain any tags. If you want to add tags to this namespace, which I imagine you do, you have to select it by clicking on the little icon on the left-hand side. At that point, you'll notice the Actions bar appears, giving you several different options. The option we're interested in at this point is the first option, which is Create Tag. When you click it, a new window will appear, and here you have to title the tag. I'll create a tag called Courses. Notice that the name is automatically added, and if you want to add a description, you can do that. I'll come down and click Create, and once you click Create, when you select Courses, you'll get information over here on the right-hand side in terms of when it was modified last, who modified it, and how many pages reference it. This information is also available on the left handrail, but in order for us to look at that information, we should probably take a look at a tag that's actually being used somewhere within a site. So I'm going to come over to the We Retail namespace. Then I'll find a tag like apparel, and you can even select a particular tag, a subtag like footwear. When you select it, notice you have 5 tag references. Now, like I said, this information is also available over here on the left-hand side. If you expand it and you choose references, you'll get this information. Of course, right now it's blank, and it's blank because we didn't select it. But if we come over and select it, you'll notice we get that reference information. And if we click on it, we can see the different assets that are referencing that tag. Likewise, if we come up towards the top, we can choose Properties, and we'll get similar information that we're getting over here on the right-hand side as well. So just be aware of that this information is also available over here on the left-hand side. So now that we've created a namespace and a tag, let's go ahead and create a subtag. We can do that by coming over to the Pluralsight namespace. Then we can select Courses by clicking on the icon to the left of the name. Again, that will bring up the Actions bar. Here, we can click the Create Tag button in the top left, and I'm going to name this AEM. And then if we come down and click Create, you'll notice that we've created an AEM subtag. This is a subtag of the Courses tag. I think we're at the point now where we can take the next step and start applying these tags, and that's exactly what we're going to do in the next clip. A moment ago, we looked at how we could go about creating a new namespace and then adding new tags to that namespace. What we want to do in this clip is take a look at how we can apply these tags to pages. Well, I'm going to come back to the product navigation, and from here, I'll choose Sites. And of course, we're going to go into the We Retail site that we've been working with, United States, English, and then you can select a page. I'll select one of the pages we've set up, like this Page 1 page. I'll open it by clicking the little pencil icon. At this point, in order for us to add tags to the page, we have to come up to the top left-hand corner, and you'll notice that we have Page Information. If you click this, a menu will appear, and you can choose Open Properties. This will open the properties for the page, and you'll notice here we can add tags. If you come over and click the little tag icon, you'll notice that we're seeing our namespace structure. And at this point, if I go into the Pluralsight namespace, I can then come into Courses, and then I can choose AEM. Then I can click the check mark. If you want to add more tags, you can. Just click the little tag icon again, select the tags that you want to use. So in this case, I'll come over to Apparel, and I'll select Footwear. Then I'll click the check mark. Once you're done adding tags, you can click the check mark here, to exit out of the dialog box. If we now come back to AEM, and specifically if we come over to the Tools, in the General section we can click Tagging. At this point we can come back into our Pluralsight namespace, go into the Courses tag and select the AEM tag, and you'll notice that we have one reference. And if you click on that reference, it'll expand the left handrail and it will show you the page that's using that tag. With the tag selected, you'll also notice that you have several options up here towards the top. If you want to edit the tag, you can do that by clicking the Edit button. At this point, you can change the title, the description, and you can even localize the tag. I'll go ahead and click Cancel. This will return you back to the tag screen. Again, I'll come over and select the AEM tag. You can also move the tag. As you know, right now it's placed within Courses, but if you click Move, you can move it to a different location. The best and easiest way to do that is to click on the little binoculars and just browse for a new parent path. Again, I'm going to cancel out of this. Again, I'll come back to the Pluralsight namespace and I'll select the AEM tag. You also have the ability to merge tags. Merge is used when a taxonomy has duplicates. For example, when tag A is merged into tag B, all the pages tagged with tag A will now be tagged with tag B, and tag A will no longer be available to authors. You'll also notice that there's a Publish option, and this activates the tag in the Publish environment. Similar to page content, only the selected tag is published, regardless of whether it's in a container tag or not. And of course, you can also unpublish it, and finally, you can delete it. So hopefully, understanding namespaces and the taxonomy associated with tags makes it easier for you to manage tags and understand how to implement them in your own AEM projects. Personalization centers on providing the user with a tailor-made environment displaying dynamic content that is selected according to their specific needs, whether it's based on predefined profiles, user selection, or interactive user behavior. Personalization involves three main elements. First, we have users. The users have profiles, both individual and group. These profiles can contain characteristics such as job description, location, and interests, and these characteristics can be used to personalize the content that they see. Then we have content. Content is what the user wants to see, preferably content of interest and use to them for fulfilling their tasks. The content can be categorized and therefore made available to users according to predefined rules. The content must be dynamic. In other words, the content must, in some way, be dependent upon the user. If every user sees the same content, then personalization would be redundant. Next, we have rules. Rules define how personalization actually happens, which content the user can see, and when. Personalization can be used in many cases. Think about a sales and distribution website like Amazon.com. Amazon can combine a user profile, the user's sales history, and their browsing history to make suggestions as to what might interest the user next. Personalization would also allow you to target user groups. Let's say the user requires a login for authorization. This is then linked to a profile providing information required for personalization, possibly details such as their location, relationships to the products, usage history, and budgeting responsibilities. There's almost a limitless amount of use cases for personalization. Adobe Experience Manager provides a framework of tools out of the box for authoring targeted content and presenting personalized experiences. First, there are brands. Brands are nothing more than a collection of activities. Then there's activities. Activities define and organize your marketing efforts. It comprises the audience that you're targeting and the period of time when the targeting is applied. Then we have experiences. Experiences exist for each activity. You define one or more experiences that will identify the audiences that you're targeting. Next, we have offers. Offers are the content that appears at a location on a page for an experience. You would use different offers for different experiences to maximize the effectiveness of the content for your audiences. Then we have audiences, which are based on marketing segments created in either Adobe Experience Manager or Adobe Target. Then we have targeting mode. Targeting mode provides tools for creating content for the experiences of your marketing activities. It's also important to note that we have two different targeting engines. The targeting engine is the mechanism that drives the logic for targeted content. The two that are available? First is the Adobe Experience Manager built-in targeting engine. It processes page requests and determines the content to display. You can use the segments created in Adobe Experience Manager for defining the audiences of your experiences. Then there's Adobe Target, and this uses information gathered from page visits. You can use the segments that you import from Adobe Target to define the audience for your experiences. Activities that use the Adobe Target engine are synchronized to Target. Personalization in Adobe Experience Manager all starts with the Personalization Console. You can access the Personalization Console from Product Navigation, and once you enter it, you'll find that it's broken up into different segments. First, we have Activities. Activities let you create, organize, and manage the marketing efforts of your brands. Using the Activities console, you can add brands, and for each brand, you can add, edit, publish, unpublish, configure, and administer activities. The Create area and Create area as live copy allows you to manage your activities, experiences, and offers between sites. You can take advantage of Adobe Experience Manager's built-in multi-site support for targeted content. There's also an Areas option, and the Areas option allows you to separate targeted content, activities, experiences, and offers used in different sites and provide a multi-site manager-based mechanism to create and manage the inheritance of targeted content together with site inheritance. Once you create a new activity, you'll have to configure the activity wizard. And the takeaway here is I want to point out you can specify the targeting engine. Now, for our purposes in this course, we're going to go with the AEM Context Hub. However, if you were working with Adobe Target, this option is also available from the Targeting Engine menu. Offers allow you to create offers that can be used in activity experiences. Using the Offers console, you can add brands. When you create a brand using the Offers console, it also appears in the Activities console, where you can add and administer activities for the brand. But you can also add a folder to an offer library to organize and store offers. Then we have Audiences. Audiences enables you to create, organize, and manage audiences for your Adobe Target account or manage segments for Context Hub. What we'll do next is jump into AEM and start looking at how we can work with the personalization console. Since we spent some time reviewing the personalization console, what I'd like to do is give you a tour here inside of Experience Manager. The first thing that you need to do is you need to navigate to the personalization console, and you can do that through product navigation. Once you're inside navigation, you can come down and click personalization, and you'll notice that personalization is broken up into 3 different sections. We have activities, offers, and audiences. Let's come over to activities to enter the activity screen. When in this console, you'll see the different brands. Remember, activities are collected into a single brand. To create a new brand, all you have to do is come up to the Create button and choose Create Brand. Remember, by creating a brand, we'll be able to categorize and organize all of our activities. When creating a brand, we have to select a template, so I'll come over here and select the brand template. Then I'll come over and click Next. Now, I have to title the brand. I'll go ahead and title it Pluralsight. And if you want to associate any tags to Pluralsight, you could. But for now, I'll come over and click Create. Once you click Create, you'll notice that the page has been created. I'll come down and click OK. Once you click OK, you'll be returned back to the Activities console, and you'll see your new brand. Let's go into the brand. And once you're in the brand, you can come up to the Create menu to create new activities and areas. Remember, areas are used to separate content within different sites. You'll notice by default, a master area was created for us when we created the brand. In this case, we'll come over and create a new activity. When creating an activity, the first thing that we have to do is give it a name, and then we have to select the targeting engine. Like I said, in this case, we're going to be using the Context Hub, AEM, but notice that there are a couple other options here, specifically Adobe Target. Leave it set to Context Hub, and then you can provide the name. I'm going to name the activity Personalization. Then you can come over and click Next. Now we have to give our activity an experience attached to an audience. We do this by clicking the Add Experience button over here on the left-hand side, and this will open up the Choose Audience dialog box. The first audience I'm going to select is female. I'll come down here and click, and you'll notice that female has been added. The next thing that we have to do is name our experience. So I'll come over and click Add Experience, and I'll give this an experience name of Female Experience. And then I'll click OK. While I'm in here, I'll do the same thing for the males. So I'll click Add Experience, then I'll choose Male, and again, I'll name the experience by clicking Add Experience, and I'll call this Male Experience. And then I'll click OK. So the idea behind this is that I want to provide female visitors and male visitors a different experience on the site. Let's go to the next step by clicking the Next button in the top right-hand corner. Here, we can specify the duration. We can either specify when activated or when deactivated for the start and end times for the activity, or we could specify an actual date. In this case, I'm going to leave it set to when activated and when deactivated. Note you can also set the priority. Again, I'm going to come up to the top right-hand corner and click Save. Now you can see that we have the personalization activity under our brand. Let's go back to the personalization console and take a look at the next item. Again, using product navigation, I can come over and choose personalization. We can now come over and click offers. Just like activities, our offers are broken up into brands. Here, we can see the Pluralsight brand that we just created. If you want to see an offer library, all you have to do is click into that brand, and you'll see that offer library. Here inside the offer library, we can come up to the Create button, and from the Create button, we can either create a folder to organize our offers, or we can just create a new offer. And you'll also notice that we have options for creating areas if we want to use these offers on other sites. Let's look at the last category in the personalization console. Again, using product navigation, I'll return back to personalization, and now I'll click Audiences. Through the Audiences console, you can create and manage the different audiences for personalization. Audiences are referred to as segments in the Context Hub and in client context. The segments are specified by specific criteria that are in turn used to see targeted content. When you target content in AEM, you'll select audiences directly in the targeting process or create new ones in this console. The label on the audience describes what type of audience it actually is. CH stands for Context Hub. If you scroll down, you may find some that say CC, which is a client context. That is for a client context segment. And you may also see some that say AT, which stands for Adobe Target. In the next clip, we'll take a look at the Context Hub and how we can use it to simulate a user's experience. We're now ready to talk about Context Hub. Context Hub is a framework that lets marketers access page and visitor information. It also allows marketers to simulate a visitor's experience based upon what they want to see and what they'll actually see on a page. We're going to be using Context Hub to test the experiences based on visitor interactions. Before we go back into AEM, I'd like to review the steps involved in personalization and content targeting. Remember, the first thing that you have to do is create a brand. And once you create a brand, you'll create an activity for it. Then you'll create an experience and then map that experience to an audience. Remember, we did this in the previous clip. What we're going to do now inside of AEM is we're going to look at how we can simulate the user experience, and also in the next clip, we'll start talking about how we can target a component. So the steps are creating a brand, creating an activity for the brand, create an experience, map the experience with an audience, then target a component, and then simulate the experience. And what we're going to do now inside of AEM is use Context Hub to simulate that experience. To gain access and to view the Context Hub, what you need to do is come up to Product Navigation, and from here you can click on the Tools setting. Then in the Category section, you can choose Sites, and from there you'll notice that we have a card called Context Hub, which will allow us to manage the Context Hub configurations. This will bring us to a screen where we can see the default configuration container. If we click that, we'll see our Context Hub configuration. Now, it is important if you need to extend this configuration in any way, you should probably talk to a developer or an admin if that's something that you need to do. In this case, I'll click to enter the Context Hub configuration, and you'll notice that it's made up of several different types of stores. The Context Hub consists of Context Hub stores to persist context data on the client and UI modes to access the store. So in this case, what we want to do is take a look at how we can work with the Context Hub toolbar in one of our pages. So again, using Product Navigation, I'm going to come over to the Sites console. Within the Sites console, I'm going to enter the We Retail site. Within the We Retail site, I'll go into United States, then hover over English and click the Open button. Once you're in the page, what you want to do, in this case, is collapse the left handrail, but you also need to be in the preview mode. Once you're in the preview mode, on the far left-hand side, you'll notice you have an icon that gives you access to the Context Hub toolbar. The Context Hub toolbar displays data from Context Hub stores and enables you to change store data. It is useful for previewing content that is determined by data in the Context Hub store. The toolbar consists of a series of UI modes that contain one or more UI modules. UI modes are icons that appear on the left side of the toolbar. When you click or tap on an icon, the toolbar reveals the UI modules that it contains. So right now, I'm in Persona. If I come over and click on Device, you'll notice the modules on the right change. Likewise, if I click on Commerce, the modules change again. The Persona mode provides information about the visitor, such as profile, location, and the segments associated with the visitor. The Device module provides information about the visitor's device, such as the type of device in the screen orientation and resolution, as well as operating system. And then the Commerce module provides visitor cart details and values such as promotions, vouchers, and so on. If we come back to the Persona module, we can then change the persona. Right now, it's set to anonymous, but we can change that. If we click on the persona, a list will appear, and it is important to click on the icon. At this point, you can scroll through the list, and what I want you to do is find Boyd Larson. Once you select Boyd Larson, you can come up and click on his persona, which is this little box to the right of his icon, and you'll get profile information like his display name, his email address, so on and so forth. The same is true with location. If you click on location, we can currently see that he is in San Jose, California, but when you click on it, a panel will appear giving you a map about his specific location. And finally, there's also resolved segments. These are segments that Boyd is a part of. So as you can see with the Context Hub, we gain access to this information. What we'll do in the next clip is look at how we can use this information to appropriately create targeted content for Boyd. So far, we've learned about the personalization console and how we could create an experience under an activity. We've also learned how we could use the Context Hub through the Context Toolbar to simulate experiences. Now, it's time to put this knowledge together and learn how we can use AEM to create targeted content for the experiences we've created in our activities. The best way to learn is by doing. So we're going to go back into AEM. And the first thing that we're going to do is enter a page. And in that page, we're going to go into the targeting mode. From there, we'll configure our page's components for content targeting based on available visitor information. We do this by configuring components in AEM to display content by assigning it an activity. Once our page has targeted content, we can then simulate the experience using the Context Hub toolbar. You'll notice I'm in the English section of the We Retail site. If I scroll down, I can find the training page that we set up earlier, and I can open it. Once you open it, you need to switch out of the Edit mode and go into the Targeting mode. Once you're in the Targeting mode, you'll notice in the top left-hand corner, you have to specify the brand that you want to use. Now, we set up the Pluralsight brand in an earlier clip. Likewise, we also set up the personalization activity. We want to use the Pluralsight brand and the personalization activity. Once you have those set, you can come over and click Start Targeting. Once you target, you'll notice that we have 3 different experiences. We have the default experience, the female experience that we created, and the male experience. The first thing we have to do is we have to establish the components that we want to target. So what we'll do is select this large image. When you do, you'll see a little target icon. Go ahead and click it, and now the component is targeted. Likewise, we're going to do the same for this text component down here. Now that we've targeted these components, we can now change what content appears within the component based upon the experience. So let's come over and select the female experience, and when you do, you can click on the component, and then you can configure it by clicking the little wrench. At this point, what we want to do is we want to change the image. So I'm going to come over to the Assets browser, and inside the Assets browser, I want to find an image that's more suitable for a female audience. So once I find an image, I'll just click and drag it into this dialog box, and then I'll click the check mark. I'll now come over and collapse the left handrail and scroll down. I can also change this text. What I'll do is click the little pencil icon to edit the text, and I'll just type in female text. And then I can come over and click the check mark. Now we want to do the exact same thing for the male experience. So at this point, what we can do is come over and choose the mail experience. You'll notice that the image changes back to the default. You can click on the component and you can configure it. Again, I'm going to open up the Assets browser, and here I'll do a search for men to find an image that a male audience would be more likely to engage with, and I'll just drag and drop it into this dialog box. Again, I'll click the check mark. Finally, I'll scroll down, and again, I'm going to collapse this left handrail. And after collapsing the left handrail, I'm going to select this text component and edit this, and I'll change the text to read mail experience. So I'll just go ahead and delete it, and then I'll type in mail experience. Then I'll come over and click the check mark. So now that I'm done, I'm ready to come over and click Next. Once you click Next, you just have to make sure that your audiences are mapped properly to the experiences, and in this case, they are. So again, I can come over and click Next again, and we can specify the duration and the priority. Again, I'll leave these set to where they are, and I'll save it. Once you save it, you then want to come over to the preview mode, and in the preview mode, you want to make sure that you're inside the Context Hub so you get the Context Hub toolbar. And here we have the persona module. Then we can come over and change the persona. Right now it's anonymous, so we're getting the default image and text within this page. But if we come over and change it to say Boyd, once we select Boyd, you'll notice that the training page is updated to show you the image that we selected and also the text. But let's just come over and choose someone else like Emily. When we select Emily, you'll notice we get the female experience. And again, this is working because if we take a look at the resolved segments, Emily happens to be female. Likewise, if we were to return back to Boyd and look at Boyd's resolved segments, we know that his resolved segment has him as a male. Whereas if we choose someone else in this persona like Anonymous, they don't have a male or female resolved segment, therefore they're getting the default content. So now, hopefully you can see how powerful content targeting can be inside of Adobe Experience Manager. The landing page feature allows marketers to import the design and content right into an Adobe Experience Manager page. The web developers prepare the HTML and additional assets. You can import the assets into a page. This functionality helps to create marketing landing pages that are dynamic and easy to create. Landing pages let you narrow your focus and remove the clutter from your pages that could distract your visitor from taking the action you want them to take. It allows you greater control to direct them and help them find what they're looking for much faster, and this, in turn, can ripple out to affect your search engine rankings too. The benefits of using landing pages are that it provides a better user experience because you're creating and providing more personalized content. It also increases conversion rates as visitors are able to precisely find what they're looking for. Ultimately, it provides more opportunities for your visitors to relate to your content. To make parts of the landing page editable within Adobe Experience Manager, the content of landing page HTML must be mapped with the Adobe Experience Manager components directly. The design importer must understand the following components of the page: text, which can be any form of text; a title, which is content in the form of headings; image, which would be the images to be included in the page; a call to action, and there's a call to action component, either a click-through link or a graphical link. A click-through link is a text link with a target URL, whereas a graphical link is an image that, when clicked, will take the visitor to the targeted URL. There's a lead form, which will capture user information. And finally, the paragraph system, or parses, which is used to add content to the existing components and to add new components. The landing pages feature in Adobe Experience Manager allows marketers to work with web designers at agencies or internal creative teams to create page designs that can be imported into Adobe Experience Manager. And the landing pages can still be edited by marketers and published under the same governance as the rest of the Adobe Experience Manager powered sites. To create a landing page, you have to create an importer page first. Then you have to prepare HTML for importing. This step is typically performed by a web developer. And finally, you have to import the design package. In the next clip, we'll run through a demonstration where we create an importer page, then we upload a design package, and finally, we'll explore the new landing page. Let's go ahead and take a look at how we can create a landing page. Before we do, I just want to point out the exercise files that you downloaded from our site, cheatsheet.zip, is a file that was in there. We're going to use this as the importer file. This cheat sheet is just an example of an HTML page that maps perfectly with the components inside of AEM. In an ideal situation, you would have a developer and a designer working in conjunction to create this asset for you. In this case, it's just an example, so it doesn't look as pretty as it would if you were working in a real-world production environment. That being said, let's return back to the browser, and in order for us to create a landing page, we have to come over to Product Navigation, and we need to get into the Sites section. Now, this is where things get a little bit different. Instead of entering the We Retail site, what we're going to do is come into the Campaigns folder. Here, within the Campaigns folder, you'll see your Pluralsight campaign that you set up earlier. Go ahead and select it. Once you select it, you'll find the master area. Go ahead and enter that. And then we want to go into the personalization activity. Go ahead and click it. And from here, this is where we want to create a new page. So I'm going to come up to the Create button. And from the Create button, I'll choose Page. Once you choose Page, it'll bring you to a screen where you can choose to create a page based upon a template. And in this case, the template that we're going to use is this importer page. With it selected, you can click Next. You have to title the page. In this case, I'll call it Pluralsight Landing Page. Now, if you're working in a real-world environment, you could also fill out these other fields like name, tags, so on and so forth. But for now, the bare minimum is fine, which is the title. Then you can come over and click Create. The page will successfully be created, and at that point, you can click Open. And when you click Open, you'll be brought into the AEM editor. In order for us to drag a zip file or an asset into the page, we have to make sure that we're in the edit mode. So make sure that edit mode is selected. And if it is, just move the browser over a little bit so you can find that zip file and just drop it into place. And when you do, you will see the page load into the editor. Again, it doesn't look like much, but you'll notice that we have all these different components. And if we wanted to, we could select a component and configure or edit the component. So here, I can click the Edit button and change the text that we're using here within this component. As you scroll down, you can see examples of all the other types of components that you can work with here within this page. So as long as your developer and designer set this up right, you should be able to create custom pages without any heavy lifting. All you have to do is drag and drop. Sadly, our time together has come to an end. We talked about quite a bit over the past 2 hours, and I hope you'll be able to take these newfound skills and be able to implement them in your day-to-day work when you're working inside of AEM. We started the course off by talking about how we can create and manage templates. Then we quickly moved on to some advanced authoring features, things like working with launches and projects and even workflows. We also talked about how you can create content fragments and how you can manage tags within AEM. And of course, this module we spent all of our time talking about personalization and targeting. Again, my name's Matthew Peasy. I want to thank you for joining me in this course. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly on Twitter. And remember, we have a large amount of resources here on Pluralsight, so if you need to further your education in AEM or any of the tools available in Marketing Cloud, please check out the library available here on Pluralsight.